Hi guys, in this video we're going to be talking about pentose phosphate pathway and the reaction in the pathway. Now let's first talk about what pentose phosphate pathway does. The main purpose of pentose phosphate pathway is to produce NADPH and ribose 5-phosphate. NADPH is used in synthetic reaction and is used to produce fat and other biomolecules, whereas ribose 5-phosphate is used to produce nucleotides that are used in DNA and RNA. Now let's go to the actual reaction mechanism. Pentose phosphate pathway can be divided into three sets of reaction steps. Now the first is the oxidative reaction. In the oxidative reaction, we start with glucose 6-phosphate, G6P. You guys have probably seen glucose 6-phosphate in glycolysis, and it's the same glucose 6-phosphate. And in the oxidative stage, the glucose 6-phosphate is converted into ribulose 5-phosphate, and during this process, 2 NADPH is produced and 1 carbon dioxide is lost. Glucose is a hexose, it has 6 carbon, and ribulose is a pentose, it has 5 carbon. So 1 carbon is lost as carbon dioxide, and each step of this oxidation reaction will be an oxidation state. An oxidative reaction is the only reaction where we make NADPH. In reaction step 2 or 3, we do not make NADPH. Now let's talk about reaction step 2. Reaction step 2 is called isomerization and epimerization reaction, reaction 4 and 5. And in this reaction, the ribulose 5-phosphate produced in the oxidative reaction is either converted into ribose 5-phosphate, which is a isomer of ribulose 5-phosphate, that's why it's called isomerization, or the ribulose 5-phosphate is converted into xylulose 5-phosphate, which is an epimer of ribulose 5-phosphate. So this is sort of like a termination of pentose phosphate pathway, but there exists a third step of the reaction called transketolase and transaldolase reaction. And in the transketolase and transaldolase reaction, 2 xylulose 5-phosphate and 1 ribose 5-phosphate are converted into fructose 6-phosphate and glycerol 3-phosphate. And this step, it takes place if we have a lot of product from pentose phosphate pathway and we want to recycle it back to the products in glycolysis. And if you guys remember, fructose 6-phosphate and glycerol 3-phosphate are products of glycolysis. Now let's look at the actual reaction steps that take place.